This is big. One of Miami's top recruiting targets for the class of 2026 has just reclassified for 2025. So what happens next?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday Eve. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On this episode, we'll talk about the impact that new defensive backs coach Zach Etheridge can have on the recruiting trail, because that's one of the areas where he possesses his greatest strengths. We'll talk about stock up for some of Miami's true freshmen enrollees, because the final recruiting rankings have just come out, and some of these Canes have gotten bumps, including one of the top members of that class of 2025 has been bumped up to a 5-star. So congratulations there. But there's a very interesting update here as we bring in the recruiting overlord. Brian Smith is with us here on Locked On Canes. So, Brian, the news drops late last night. Javari Flowers, 4-star cornerback and Miami target out of Miami Northwestern, who has been a class of 2026 recruit. He's a junior in high school, but the news just comes out last night. Javari Flowers is reclassifying to 2025. So his timeline now gets very compressed from here on out. He also runs track and runs track very well. So between his track meets, he's going to be taking some official visits to various schools. Miami, I'm sure, will be included there. And he's going to have to decide by April 1st is the end of the next signing period to enroll at the school of his choice by summer. What can you tell us first about Javari Flowers as a football player and an athlete?
First thing is he has makeup speed. So the track doesn't surprise anyone. I saw him a few weeks ago at the Battle Miami tournament. It's the best 7-on tournament in the country each year. And I was really impressed. I liked his film, but there's something different about seeing a kid from the naked eye. And that tournament has Division I receivers everywhere. And he was one of the best players at the event, regardless of grade, regardless of position, etc. He's always getting his hands on the football. So makeup speed is the first thing. Secondarily, he's very aggressive. He doesn't shy away from top competition. He likes to play man, and he can play off coverage too, but he'll get after you in man coverage. This is a kid that's coveted by pretty much every school in the country, and he can pick his program.
Yeah, as far as programs that seem to be in the mix here, I'll list a few, and then Brian Smith may have another that it won't make Miami fans too happy because, prior to his reclassification, Brian, there has been a lot of Miami buzz for him, and obviously a Miami Northwestern product. The Hurricanes historically do very well with that and other local schools. Even a couple of days ago, Stephen Wagner from Cane Sport on 3 dropped an RPM prediction for Miami to land Flowers. This was before the reclassification. Other schools that are trying to get him for official visits this spring. I've seen Georgia buzz. He's got a Georgia offer. Florida State, Ole Miss even offered him recently. Most of these, even the analysts who cover these other schools, most of them consider Miami to be the front runner. And Brian, there may be another school that can get in the mix here over the next couple months.
The one time I interviewed Javari was when he was at the Under Armour All-American game. We had a media day, and he told me that growing up, his favorite program was Oregon. And you know how it is. You know how it is with Oregon. They recruit nationally because they have to.
Yeah.
And that's a program they've been in Florida this week, actually. I don't know if they've been by Northwestern yet, but I'm sure they will. And that's something that Lanning likes. He's much like Mario, that he enjoys recruiting. That'll be an interesting program to watch because, you can't get much further than from Miami to Eugene. Does he want to go that far for college? I don't know. But, Georgia, Florida State, Miami makes sense, but don't count out the Ducks either. That's a program he really likes.
And I've seen like some Miami fans are like, well, wait, like we really needed him for 26, don't need him as much for 25, just based on, how many corners are on campus already. I say like, okay, if this is a really good player, I'm not going to like, hey, lose interest in a guy just because it's a different year. I'm still very interested in Javari Flowers. And also, Brian, I saw a note that, even though he's a junior in high school, he's actually the age of a senior. So he's not like, this is not a 17-year-old. He's already 18. He would be 19 next year. So he's actually similar age to regular class of 2025 players. So this doesn't seem to be an instance of, hey, this guy may not be physically ready for the next level, because he's actually in the same physical profile as class of 2025s.
Yeah, I'm not worried about the physical profile after seeing him play. I can assure you that. He's a kid that can mix it up. He's not humongous or anything. He's like 5'10" and a half, 180 pounds, something like that. But he can really run. He's a physical kid, and Miami's strength program or Florida State's or Oregon's, whatever, would take care of the rest. His desire to play football and be an elite player will take care of the rest. So do not be surprised if he ends up playing some. I've got him in the top 10 in the state of Florida for 26, maybe top 5. Kind of depends on how you want to look at it, but he might be the best DB in the state for this next group. And anytime, I don't care what grade you're in, that's a player you want. So there you go.
So let me ask you hypothetically, like if Miami is or was perceived to be the leader for him as a 2026 prospect with all that extra time, now that the timeline gets, compressed, where he's basically got a little over 2 months to decide his next school, does that, if Miami was seen to be in the lead, does that help Miami, or does this now just create so much chaos that maybe it could hurt Miami's chances?
Well, that's a great question. This is the first time we've seen something like this with the South Florida kid that's, all of a sudden doing it. And, NIL is really developing.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like next week is National Signing Day for the traditional timeline and the old school people. But I don't know, because I know Miami's been all over him just from talking to Flowers, but NIL is going to factor into this too. So I can't predict like I used to, because that changes the recruitment so much. It's really hard to say. There might be a school willing to overpay because they stink so bad at DB. How do you know that? It's just true. It's a market deal. So my predictions I've laid off of a lot more here lately, because it's some of these kids are going to schools. I'm like, there is no way that kid is going to that school unless he's getting paid a bundle. It's just the way it is. So Miami has good NIL too, and it's the local school. They recruited him for a long time, and we all know Mario and his staff do a good job on the trail. But I wouldn't count out anything. And he's got a couple months to figure it out. Let's see where he visits and start setting them up. I'm sure he's going to get hit up by the Chad Simmons of the world to find out what his visit list will be. Once that's established, we'll probably have a better idea.
Yeah, by the way, when Brian talks about that makeup speed that he has and that track speed, he's a state champion in the 100-meter, ran it in 10.43 seconds. So you'd love to have that sort of speed in your defensive backfield. And folks, we have more recruiting to talk about on this episode of Locked On Canes with the recruiting overlord Brian Smith with us. Coming up next, can the Miami Hurricanes land the brother of a former Miami Dolphins star? We are proudly brought to you by Game Time. Game Time, this is your spot. Now that the Super Bowl is coming up, attending that big game or any NFL playoff game is an experience like no other. The energy, the excitement, and the connection with other fans is unmatched. I remember the thrill of seeing my first playoff games, my first big games growing up live with my family. It's a memory I will never forget. This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature called Game Time Picks. It filters out the fluff and shows you only the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, being there. Guys, I've used Game Time Picks to grab hockey tickets recently, Florida Panthers games, Orlando Solar Bears games. I've used tickets Game Time on concerts. It couldn't have been easier. I found a super deal that gave me incredible value for amazing seats, and I could even preview the view from my seat before buying. The all-in pricing is a game changer. No surprise fees at checkout. Plus, knowing my tickets are backed by Game Time Guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Football. Spencer McLaughlin does an incredible job. It doesn't stop with the national championship game being over. NIL, recruiting, transfer portal. Spencer always has you covered. Like this show, it's available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord, is with us. A player that really intrigues me. This guy, I'm assuming he's not going to reclassify. 2026 four-star cornerback out of St. Thomas Aquinas, Justice Fitzpatrick. Now, I'm going to claim Minka as a Miami Dolphin. I know he spent a lot more time at the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he's the younger brother of Minka Fitzpatrick. And Mario Cristobal had a big hand in Minka's recruitment to the Alabama Crimson Tide when Mario was there. In fact, Mario has kept in touch with the family, and that connection could go a long way. And I've heard good things, positive buzz around Miami with Justice Fitzpatrick. What can you tell us about this player? What's the scouting report?
This is another kid that kind of fits the profile of what Saban used to recruit. Like his brother, he's very long, he's very athletic, and he's got a lot of makeup speed. I saw him just like I did with Javari Flowers at the battle tournament. And the thing that I noticed the most is he's better in off coverage and breaking on the ball. I think he could end up at safety. At the high school level, it doesn't matter where he plays, but with his length and the way he breaks on the ball from deep, I like him there. But he's got offers from everybody, and he's at STA. He's getting coached up. I think this is a kid that's going to basically be able to pick his school, Florida State, and everybody else is going to offer him and come after him hard. And now I'm kind of curious with him because of his brother, the names there. It's a lot of pressure. I mean, his brother was a great college player at Bama, and then he's been an NFL guy for a long time. I'm just curious to see what his next move is with his visits. He's one of the kids I'm kind of monitoring in Florida because his recruitment will be one of the most heavy in the entire state.
Now, a player that we're monitoring from Georgia, this one actually, he went to the same high school as Nye Carr, who's on Miami's roster now, Colquitt County, running back Jay Lamar. And Lamar, he's going to be visiting Miami this weekend for Junior Day, Brian. I know he's got a good connection with Miami running backs coach Matt Merritt. It seems like there's a lot of positivity with that recruitment. What can you tell us about Jay Lamar?
Love him. He reminds me quite a bit of a certain running back who's going to be a junior at Miami this next season. Very similar body builds, 215, 220. To be honest with you, I don't know if there's a better big back in the 26 class. He's a top 5 running back nationally by pretty much anybody. And he plays at a tremendous high school program. Colquitt's one of my favorite schools to go visit. Downhill, power, but he's also got good speed and pretty good movement in the hole. I don't think you could really do better if you wanted an all-around running back. He would fit Miami's scheme to a T. Now, getting him away from UGA and Auburn will not be easy. Those are the two schools that I've heard the most with him, but that's why this visit is so important. You're talking about a national top 50 kind of player, and Central Georgia is a pretty rough place to get kids out of. So we'll see if they can keep him away from one of the SEC programs, but that's a great football player.
All right, I want to take a look here with Brian Smith, the recruiting overlord, on a handful of true freshmen at Miami, guys who have just arrived on campus. Most of these guys are early enrollees. In fact, the only true freshman who's not an early enrollee is Bryce Fitzgerald, just because he wasn't able to, or his school did not allow him to graduate early. So everybody else in that freshman class is already on campus. And some of these guys, Brian, as the final rankings have just come out from all the recruiting services, some of these guys have gotten significant bumps. A huge bump was given to Hayden Lowe, Miami's incoming edge rusher, who already has tremendous size. He's now a 5-star, according to 24/7 Sports. So, Jason Taylor, his primary recruiter, got himself another 5-star. Lowe is someone who just rocked it at the All-Star games, postseason stuff. Do you see Hayden Lowe as someone who could have an instant impact on that edge rusher rotation?
Well, he's certainly not going to hurt the depth chart. If he's your third team guy, then I guess that's good for Miami. But this is the key to winning. When Miami was great, they always had younger players pushing the older players to keep their positions or they lost them. Miami's always been famous for playing younger guys. Like Michael Irvin played as a freshman. I mean, that's an easy one to pick, but there's been a ton of players like that. Why not another kid? So Ruben Bain played right off the bat. If you're good, they will play you. So the key for him is not physical, because you watch his film and any idiot can tell you that Hayden Lowe is a very gifted player. Now, can he pick up some of the little things that he'll have to do? Because he ran over guys in high school. He just ran over guys, and he was quicker and all that too. If he can pick up a few of the things that they're teaching, obviously having a Hall of Famer coach who helps, I could see him being a pass rusher or a situational player at least. I don't think Miami's in dire need of him to play or start or anything, but I think he'll get 100 snaps this next season at least. And considering what Miami's defensive end depth charts are like, that's pretty good.
Another player that got a significant bump, including ESPN, now rates him as the #1 center in the class of 2025 is S.J. Alofaituli from Bishop Gorman, who's on campus. And, Brian, he's not going to have pressure in his first season because Miami added another senior one and done starting center in James Brockermeyer, who should be able to hold that position down. But I like the opportunity that Alofaituli is going to have to, learn for at least 1 year and potentially be Miami's next great center.
This is probably the best center in the country for this class. Everybody I've spoken to that's seen him live loves him. I haven't seen a single person that's in the recruiting circuit or anybody that's played the spot, any player that I've talked to that's went up against him or anything, have a bad thing to say about him. And he's a great guy. This will be Miami's starting center in 26, barring something unforeseen. And to be honest, Miami's going to get a good one. He will play on Sundays, and I absolutely love him.
Yeah, someone who I remember seeing early feedback from off-season workouts that was like really impressive, and maybe he can contribute early on is tight end Brock Schott, Brian, who we're wondering. I don't know what he's weighing these days. If he's gotten above that like 215, 220 range that he was in his final year of high school, but he seems to have all the skills and all the talent. And you think this is someone who could become one of the next greats at tight end U?
Well, they lost Arroyo. They lost the ninth-year senior. They lost it still blows me away that it was 9, wasn't it? But I mean, whatever.
It was 9, yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. They lost Riley. I mean, it's a numbers game here. I still wouldn't be shocked if UM picked up somebody after the spring portal window opened up just to get another depth piece, but whatever. There's a chance for a flex tight end to play. Why not Brock? And I loved his high school film. The question is going to be, can he do more than be a flex guy as a freshman? Because we both know that Miami likes to use its tight ends and H-backs as power blockers, wham blocks, different things that open up the running game. Freshmen generally aren't the greatest at that. So I'm really curious about his size. But as a route runner and as an athlete, he's as much tight end as he is receiver, and much receiver as tight end. It's just, he will not be fun for people. 3rd and 6, I could see him being in the game. I'm just curious if he can be in the game on 1st and 10. It's a lot to ask for a freshman tight end in Miami's offense.
What about the Armwood guys? So Gerard Pringle coming in at running back, Kellen Wiley, who's like, I think he's already in the 250 or 240 range, I think, like 239, something like that, coming in at linebacker. With someone like Gerard Pringle, especially, I kind of wonder, because we've seen the last couple of years, Mark Fletcher got a lot of burn as a true freshman in 2023. Jordan Lyle gets a lot of opportunities as a true freshman in 2024. Maybe Gerard Pringle can get himself in the mix right away.
Running back is the position where people get beat up. I mean, we've heard Miami coaches talk about that in the last year. So it's just, it's an attrition spot. You need 4 guys who can play. So they're going to expect him to, at some point there's going to be a game. He's going to be 2nd string this year or something. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
Is he ready for it? I think so. His high school film is tremendous. He played in the greater Tampa area. It's really good competition. And he played in Armwood, which they don't shy away from playing anybody. They always have good players. He's going against a pretty good teammate of his at the high school level and soon to be college as well every day in practice. He's been tested. So I think that he'll play some, as always, with a running back. It's a freshman. Can he pass protect? That will dictate how much he plays. You can't have your quarterback getting drilled because the running back can't pass protect. I don't know if he will or not, but he's a strong kid and he's not fearful. He was really good between the tackles, which is usually a good sign for pass protection. You got to want to take on that guy. That's not fun, but you got to want to take that on. So I love him. Now we just need to see if he can handle the physicality of the pass protection. Because a running back just running, I think he'll be fine.
What about Kellen Wiley at linebacker?
Why not? Now, my question is, which spot specifically do they want to play him at?
That's a good question.
He's big enough to play the mic, but that's a lot of responsibility for a freshman.
Yeah.
Calling the defense and, making adjustments. They probably aren't going to do much with that. He'll play immediately on special teams. I think goal line and specialty situations are pretty much a lock. But if he can break into the lineup, otherwise it's going to be about the mental stuff. Again, playbook. Linebacker is really hard to teach in today's game because of the RPO game. That's going to be something we'll have to find out once you get a chance to go to Green Tree, et cetera, to watch some of those guys, because he has the physical tools to play early. Now it's just more in the system.
We're not done yet on this episode of Locked On Canes here with Brian Smith. When we come back, we've talked about the impact that new DBs coach Zach Etheridge can have as a coach and as a developer, but what about his impact as a recruiter? We'll talk about that next. Thank you so much for making this episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, so Brian, you're out there. You're at all the camps and all the 7-on-7s and all these recruiting events. And I've heard, over the past few days since Miami has hired Zach Etheridge, who is most recently DB's coach and defensive passing game coordinator at Houston, was at Auburn for 3 years prior to that. You're in the Auburn area now, so you probably heard the tales about Ethridge and everything. Him as a recruiter, because I've heard that he's an effective, energetic recruiter, especially in the southeast part of the country. What can you tell me there?
That's right on the mark. Everybody that I'd spoken to when I got here, he was kind of going out the door. That's a guy that they lost a really good recruiter at Auburn when he went to Houston. But he's also a guy that when he took over, I believe it was 21, Auburn was terrible in the secondary. They moved up 30 spots in 22, then another 30 spots the year after that. And then like this past season, this probably make Miami fans mad, but Houston, they don't have near the talent Miami did. They were 28th in the nation in pass defense. Miami was 57th. So like he can coach too, but he is known first as a recruiter, and he's going to be very effective in Atlanta, New Orleans, Mississippi, Alabama, and Mario likes to recruit those areas. So you're getting an all-around coach. You're not getting just a guy that can go on the recruiting trail or just be an X's and O's guy, teach technique. He's both. So it also helped. He was just at Houston this past season. There aren't many cities better than Houston as far as high school football. Don't be surprised if Miami's in on somebody down in that area this next year.
That's a really good point. Now, while I have you here, Brian, I got to ask you, you're also the host of Locked On Seminoles. You do a great job there. Because we've a lot of the last few days here on Locked On Canes, we've talked about Miami's football schedule. It's weird. You got bye weeks, 2 out of 3 weeks.
I was going to ask you about that, actually. It's
ridiculous. I mean,
I've never seen that in my life. Have you?
No.
Have you seen?
And apparently Miami are not the only ones. Miami are not the, Isaac Shade from Locked On Tar Heels told me UNC has the same thing. They've got 2 bye weeks and 3 weeks. The ACC schedule makers are drunk.
Wow, that is really weird.
Yeah.
I don't even know, that's not something that I've had on my conscious mind. Like, why would you ever do that?
I don't know.
I mean,
it makes no sense. You
want
to
at least to play 2 games in a row, really 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But 1?
Yeah.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Well, and ironically enough, the game that's sandwiched between those bye weeks is the game against Florida State. Now, I don't always know for Miami if that's a good thing, because historically Miami has played really badly coming out of bye weeks. They not last year though. Last year they temporarily broke that trend. But anything from the Florida State schedule, obviously Florida State has a very difficult opening game against Alabama. Not an easy schedule whatsoever. But what stands out about the FSU schedule?
Well, the back 4 for them is not very friendly. They got at Clemson, trap game. Their only home game at the back stretch is Virginia Tech, which is not any pushover, as you well know. Then their last 2 games are at NC State and at Florida. So the schedule starts really hot and ends really hot. And then you got Miami in the middle. It's really weird schedule. But we have so many different things to talk about before. Like you got both new coordinators, you got new position coaches. Yeah, it's who knows with Florida State. I'm not a betting man, but that would be a team on the over/under. I wouldn't touch with the 10-foot pole. I wouldn't even know where it really to begin. I'm going to guess they go bowling, but that's not even a lock. And they won 2 games last year. So, but again, their schedule is not as goofy as Miami's, and I think Miami's might be more difficult because while Alabama's hard, Notre Dame's probably in a better spot right now and that's who Miami opens up with. And they got Florida. They do get Florida at home. They get Notre Dame at home. So that's nice.
Yeah.
But their schedule's not easy. And the bye week thing is going to hurt Miami in the back end of the
Yeah.
schedule. What is it? 6? How many games in a row are they going to play after the second
7,
bye?
I believe. 7. Yeah.
Historically, it's
Crazy.
been proven once you get to game 6 in a row, you're just not going to get maximum. You're just not. So the last couple of games for the Canes, I don't know who they are, but they're not going to see the
and the last couple of games are both on the road in potential very cold weather spots. The second to last game is at Virginia Tech in late November, and then at Pittsburgh at Thanksgiving weekend. It's going to be cold there.
Then they've got an experienced quarterback now. So that's really rough. The ACC might have hosed itself because Clemson's probably, I would assume, going to win the league, but you want your second place team to come in at 11-1. That's going to be hard. The ACC could. The ACC as a league has a lot of problems. I'm just going to
a lot of problems. Yeah. We can leave it at that. Great stuff as always by Brian Smith. You could follow him on X at FBScout_Florida. Make sure you also check him out all over the Locked On Podcast Network, including Locked On Seminoles. And for me to endorse a Florida State show, it's got to be good. And Brian runs that show like a pure professional. So make sure you check him out there. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to Locked On Canes. We'll talk to you next time on another episode right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.